Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Realms, Rescue, and Starships. I'm your host, Philip, and tonight we're starting a brand new adventure in my sci fi series, Stellar Command Vanguard Corps. Before we dive in, I want to share a little bit about how I first fell in love with science fiction. Because this series, this universe, all of it started with those early moments. I grew up in a small town, and around 1985, we finally got cable for the first time. Before that, we had an old antenna on the roof, and if the weather was right and the wind wasn't fighting us, we could pull in ABC out of St. Joseph, CBS out of Des Moines, NBC out of Des Moines, and if we were lucky, Fox out of Kansas City, Missouri. One night, I was sitting on the couch next to my dad. He was watching a black and white movie, The Thing from Another World. And when the creature appeared, he leaned over and said, "That's Marshall Dillon," before he became Marshall Dillon. I still remember that moment. We watched the whole thing, and then the second movie in the double feature came on, the original The Blob with Steve McQueen. Those two films lit the fuse. A few days later, at my grandparents' house, I saw my very first episode of Star Trek, the original series. Captain Kirk was fighting that white gorilla looking creature with the single horn on its head. I didn't even know what the show was called until the end credits rolled. Years passed, and then I saw the premiere of Star Trek The Next Generation. That was it. I was hooked for life. As I grew up, I watched Voyager, Enterprise, and all the movies. That's when I fell in love with the space exploration, the idea of stepping into the unknown and seeing what's out there. And that love is what eventually led me to create Stellar Command. So tonight, we're boarding the SCS Camelot and starting a brand new journey together. Grab your rations, settle in, and get comfortable. I hope you enjoy this story as much as I enjoyed writing it. Before we begin, a quick reminder, you can email me anytime at philiphanks48@gmail.com. That's PHILIPHANKS 48 at gmail.com. I read every message and I reply both in email and here on the podcast. All right, let's begin. The story begins aboard the starship SCS Camelot, SC 1975, the first vessel of the new Thor class, a battle cruiser designed to push the boundaries of stellar command engineering. Half again the size of a Vanguard class starship, the Camelot carries expanded scientific facilities, a significantly enlarged med center, and a formidable array of weaponry. She is both a battleship and a deep space exploration vessel, built to face the unknown with strength and precision. The Camelot is armed with the most advanced Aurora pulse array system Stellar Command has developed, along with both quantum lance torpedoes and graviton warheads. Her defensive and combat systems networks are supported by a ship-wide hollow projector grid installed on the bridge, main engineering, med center, and at every major station in an emergency. Holographic crew members can instantly take over critical positions, reinforce departments, or even assume command if necessary. In recent years, Stellar Command Academy has implemented three standard biomedical augments for all graduating cadets, regardless of their assigned specialty. These procedures, though minor, dramatically enhance safety and communication across the fleet. The first implant is a bioscanner that enables the chief medical officer to monitor vital signs, including blood pressure, heart rate, respiration rate, and potential infections. Systems operations can also use this bioscanner as a homing beacon, ensuring a phased transit lock on expedition team members at all times. The second implant is a logistics interface node, placed behind the ear and connected to the inner auditory system. This device allows the wearer to hear any spoken language in their native tongue. The third implant is a speech synthesis modulator embedded in the throat, linked to the ear node. It ensures that when the individual speaks, listeners hear the words in their native language. These procedures are quick and nearly painless, thanks to a breakthrough nanite based technique originally adapted aboard the Ardent expedition during its journey through uncharted Sector 92 Theta. The nanites were reprogrammed from adaptive repair units into medical tools. The first successful use occurred when they were employed to heal navigator ensign Leon Mercer after a life-threatening illness. Since then, Stellar Command has refined the technology, discovering countless safe and beneficial applications. Armed with cutting-edge technology, a powerful new class design, and a crew prepared for the unknown, the SCS Camelot stands ready to begin her maiden voyage. This journey will test Stellar Command's newest innovations and challenge the limits of exploration itself. Soon, Camelot's empty corridors would echo with footsteps, voices, and choices that would shape the frontier. SCS Camelot Command Crew Personnel Files. Stellar Command Database. Access Level 6 required. Vessel Registry. SCS 1975. Class Thor Class Battle Cruiser. Status Active. Captain Kasai. Species Dravari. First Officer Commander Monop. Species Vescari. Second Officer Chief Engineer Commander Nizo Dax. Species Symbiont bearing Sarathi. Chief Medical Officer Lieutenant Commander Sarara. Species Etheria. Chief of Security Combat Systems Officer Lieutenant Commander Philip Banks. Species Human. Chief Science Officer Lieutenant Kidda. Species Thalaria. Chief Control Officer Navigation Control Lieutenant Jalen Rourke. Species Human. Chief Operations Officer Systems Operations Lieutenant Terral. Species Etheria. Chief Communications Officer Ensign Marissa Hale. Species Human. Security Division Lieutenant Commander Philip Banks, Chief of Security. Combat Systems Lieutenant Heather Banks, Alpha Team Leader. Lieutenant Smith, Beta Team Leader. Lieutenant Benson, Charlie Team Leader. Lieutenant Crandall, Delta Team Leader. Chapter 1 Stellar Command Dockyard. The SCS Camelot hung in silent orbit above Earth, secured within the massive arms of the Stellar Command Dockyard. A low hum from the power grid vibrated through her hull, a steady heartbeat beneath the faint rhythmic pulse of the station clamps holding her in place. Across the ship, engineers and science officers from the station moved briskly through corridors and compartments, completing final installations and running diagnostics on every major system, including both of the Camelot's newly installed quantum processing cores, their conduits glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed in time with the ship's power flow. They weren't alone. Security teams patrolled each deck, overseeing the installation of the weapons systems and conducting a full inventory of every hand weapon stored in the strategically placed lockers throughout the ship. Lieutenant Commander Philip Banks stood on the bridge, monitoring the activity as he tapped his comlink badge. Lieutenant Commander Banks to all security team leaders, report status. Alpha Team responded first. This is Lieutenant Banks. Engineers estimate 3 more hours on the Aurora Pulse Array System and 2 hours on the torpedo systems. Lieutenant Smith, Beta Team, came the next voice. Decks 1 through 10, all weapons accounted for and secured. Lieutenant Benson, Charlie Team. Another voice added. Decks 10 through 20, all weapons accounted for and secured. Finally, Lieutenant Crandall, Delta Team. Decks 20 through 30, all weapons accounted for and secured. Chief Engineer reports that the Quantum Core and both Quantum Processing Cores are ready for operations. They're finishing the final connections to the main bridge. Combat Systems, command deck now. Understood, Philip replied. All security team leaders, report to the brig for a briefing. All other personnel continue your assignments until further notice. He turned to the security detail stationed on the bridge. Carry on. I'll return shortly. Philip stepped into the grav lift, feeling the faint vibration of the station clamps through the deck plating, a reminder that the Camelot was still tethered, not yet free. Brig. The lift descended smoothly. When the doors opened, he saw two of his team leaders already heading inside. He followed them. The brig lights cast a clean, sterile glow across the security consoles, their displays reflecting the steady pulse of the ship's power grid. He began the briefing. First of all, he said, looking around the room, you've all done extremely well. I look forward to working with each of you and your teams. He tapped his command tablet. Now let's get to work. Lieutenant Banks, you and Alpha Team will take the first 12-hour shift. Lieutenant Benson, Charlie Team, will take the second 12-hour shift. Alpha and Charlie will be supplemented by Beta and Delta. He continued, voice steady and authoritative. As soon as the engineers and science officers finish, we'll have 24 hours of leave. Lieutenant Smith and Crandall, notify your teams of the new duty assignments in person, then meet me back here. Philip paced slowly as he spoke. Once we depart and begin our mission of exploration, the combat system station on the bridge will be manned by me, the team leaders, and other security personnel as needed. The combat systems command deck will be manned at all times by a minimum of 2 security officers. He paused, letting the information settle. I'll be scheduling sim deck training for all security personnel, including myself and the team leaders. We'll also have a bridge simulator for combat systems drills. He checked the time. In about 5 hours, the weapons arrays, torpedo systems, warp coil, navigation connections, and quantum processing cores should be fully installed. At that point, we'll turn security over to dockyard personnel and begin our leave. He looked around the room. Once we return, we'll meet in the briefing room off the bridge, and we'll hold weekly meetings from then on. If there's nothing else, you have your orders. I look forward to serving with all of you. Philip stood, and the team leaders followed him out of the brig. He returned to the bridge, where the security detail updated him on the latest progress. After reviewing their reports, he headed back toward the brig to continue preparations. Once inside, Philip paused, scanning the room as he considered where to begin. A moment later, Lieutenant Smith and Crandall entered behind him. Smith, Philip said, check the access panels for the weapons and all brig control systems. Aye, sir. Smith moved quickly to the wall panels, opening each one and running diagnostics. Crandall, Philip continued, test the containment fields. Crandall nodded and activated the nearest cell. Step inside, sir. Philip entered the cell, and the shimmering blue field snapped into place. Crandall ran a full power cycle test, then released him. Containment fields are stable, Crandall reported. Good, let's move. The 3 officers left the brig and headed to the armory. Once inside, they began checking and double-checking every security measure, weapon lockers, biometric locks, inventory logs, and emergency access protocols. When they finished, Philip stepped back and said, "Computer, activate the emergency security hologram." A hologram materialized before them, standing at attention. "Access code, please." Philip responded crisply. "Authorization code Alpha Omega 1975 Delta." "Access code accepted," the hologram replied. "What are your orders, Lieutenant Commander?" "State your status and clearance level." "I am a fully operational emergency security hologram," it said. "With my personal holo projector, I can access any weapon and any console. I can travel throughout the ship. I am programmed with Stellar Coalition and Dravari tactical doctrines. I have clearance for the bridge and all areas aboard the Camelot." Philip watched the hologram with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Camelot's security systems were coming together exactly as planned. "Computer, deactivate hologram." The hologram vanished. He turned to Smith and Crandall. "Let's go to the combat systems command deck. I want every system verified before launch." The combat systems combat deck was quiet when they arrived. The three officers immediately began running diagnostics, checking every console, every weapons control, every shield interface. They repeated the process 3 times until Philip was satisfied. He tapped his comlink badge. "Lieutenant Commander Banks to Lieutenant Banks. Are they finished yet?" Heather's voice came through clearly. "Chief Engineer Dax reports they're running final tests now." "Understood." Philip gestured toward the grav lift, and the three officers stepped inside. When they emerged onto the main bridge, Philip surveyed the activity. Engineers were still moving between stations, completing final calibrations. "Lieutenant Banks," he called out, "you and Alpha Team are relieved." Heather nodded and signaled her team. Philip turned to Crandall. "Collect Delta Team and follow Alpha Team off the ship. You all have 24 hours of leave." "Aye, sir." Philip lowered himself into the command chair, watching as the engineering teams completed their final checks. After a moment, he tapped his comlink again. "Lieutenant Commander Banks, to all remaining security personnel, you are hereby granted 24 hours of leave." Security officers and engineers began filing out, some heading for the phase transit room, others toward the transit conduits. Once the last of them had departed, Philip stood. "Computer, activate the emergency security hologram and transfer it to its personal holo projector on the bridge. Authorization Alpha Omega 1975 Delta." The holographic officer appeared beside him. "What are your orders, Lieutenant Commander?" "Once all personnel are off this ship, you will be in command. Notify me immediately of any emergency. After I depart, reduce power to bare minimum and take life support offline for the next 23 hours." "Acknowledged," the hologram said. "Orders will be carried out." Philip gave a final nod and stepped into the grav lift. "Phase transit room." The doors closed, carrying him toward the start of his brief leave, and the final quiet moment before Camelot's first mission truly began. Once on Earth, Philip made his way to his parents' home. He slipped in through the back door, the same one he used to sneak out of as a teenager. The familiar creak of the hinges made him smile. The familiar scent of his mother's cooking still lingered in the air. The warmth of the house wrapped around him like a memory. He stepped quietly into the living room and paused. At the dining room table, his sister and brothers were gathered, talking and eating, their laughter filling the house. The sight warmed him more than he expected. He took a step forward. The floorboard beneath him squeaked. His sister gasped, spun around, and froze until recognition lit her face. She rushed to him, threw her arms around him, and then promptly slugged him in the stomach. Hard enough to sting, soft enough to show affection. "Still sneaking around," she muttered. Philip laughed and took a seat at the table. The family talked late into the night, catching up on everything they had missed. Eventually, one by one, they drifted off to bed. A few hours before his alarm, Philip was jolted awake by the ping of his comm link badge. Lieutenant Commander Banks, he answered groggily. Ensign Ralston, sir. Sorry to bother you, but the captain requests your presence in the meeting room 24A at Stellar Command Headquarters. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He showered quickly, dressed, and transited to Stellar Command Headquarters. When he arrived, he stood outside the designated room until the doors slid open. Inside, a tall Dravari officer waited for him. Philip snapped to attention. At ease, Lieutenant Commander, the Dravari said. I am Captain Kasai. Philip relaxed slightly as the captain continued. I run a lax ship to a point. I do not tolerate misconduct, dereliction of duty, or officers who refuse to follow just orders. Your file states that you graduated in the top 5% of your academy class. Your previous commanders speak highly of you. You have been cited for gallantry and valor. These are the reasons I requested you. Kasai studied him for a moment. I want a security chief and combat systems officer who will support my decisions, but who is not afraid to question me when necessary. I have reviewed your staff and approve every single person. However, he raised an eyebrow. Is there a typo? The Alpha team leader has the same last name as you. No, sir, Philip replied. She's my sister. She also finished in the top percent of her academy classes. Will this be a problem? No, sir. In that case, Kasai said, I look forward to serving with you. Philip inclined his head. Captain, it will be an honor and a privilege to serve with you. I've read your record as well. Your reputation in the Dravari fleet is impressive, and your time at Stellar Command Academy was brief but exceptional. Kasai gave a small approving nod. You are dismissed, Lieutenant Commander. Philip stepped out of the room, feeling both the weight and the promise of the mission ahead. Once outside Stellar Command headquarters, the weight of responsibility settled on him, but so did a spark of anticipation. Philip tapped his comlink badge. Lieutenant Commander Banks to emergency security hologram. Go ahead, sir. Reinitialize life support and phase transit me aboard. A moment later, the phase transit field wrapped around him and he materialized on the Camelot. The familiar hum of the ship's power grid greeted him as the transient effect faded. He headed straight for the bridge. Computer, he said as he stepped onto the command deck, bring all systems back online and terminate emergency security officer clearance, Alpha Omega 1975 Delta. Acknowledged. Philip moved to the combat system station and began running system checks. One by one, the indicators shifted to green. Satisfied, he began preparing the bridge for the captain's arrival. When everything was ready, he accessed the communications array. Camelot to crew, please report for duty in 3 hours. He closed the channel and performed one final sweep of the systems before heading to the briefing room. Thank you for joining me tonight aboard the SCS Camelot. Chapter 1 is also a special moment, that quiet breath before the journey truly begins. The ship is waking up, the crew is gathering, and the future is still untouched. I've always loved that feeling, the stillness before the stars open up. Stories like this remind me of where my love for science fiction began. Sitting beside my dad, watching those old black and white films, hearing him point out the actors, the moments, the magic, and at the end of The Thing from Another World, the reporter gives a warning that stuck with me my whole life. Keep watching the skies. For Stellar Command, for Camelot, for all of us who still look up and wonder, I like to think of it a little differently now. Keep watching the stars. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to reach out, you can email me anytime at philiphanks48@gmail.com. That's PHILIPHANKS 48 I read every message and I appreciate every one of you who takes the time to write. Until next time, rest well, travel safe, and keep your eyes on the horizon. Good night.